obviously it's a process, but even for the other generations, we know that relationships takes time. There could be conflicts in relationships and so on and so forth. So what could be any final words of advice in terms of what would you say you've seen? I mean, young Gen Zs, where you see that there is a change and there is a process. But of course, if you had to fast forward, right, and again as parents or even as teachers or even as bosses, right, I think how do we just any tips, final tips on how do we help them continue to shift their mindset, right, to say that it is not transactional. We will need to keep putting effort, right? Because the story that I always tell a lot of my friends is that my father used to always pick up this old book he had, a black book in which he had all the contacts of the people, and after his disability for many years he would simply call. He would probably never meet them, and he was active. And my brother and I would always talk to say that, okay, I mean, first of all, do we even have a list like this? Would we call, even if you don't call, let's say, 100 people, would we even call it 50 people, right? So I think our generation also probably, but at least our generation realizes that there is this need. So for that generation, anything else would you say? I mean, just
So first, I think they need to leverage the environment and the trust. Okay, the warmth. So we need to create that, and they need to start with trusting people. I know for some it doesn't come naturally, but that is necessary. Now, despite having that, there will be conflicts. For managing conflict, a relationship is a necessity, especially when you look at Asia compared to the West. We depend heavily on relationships and trust. Correct. And the conflict resolution assumes that there is a working relationship. It's like emotional bank account idea of Stephen Covey, that if you and I have a functional relationship and I goof up and don't show up for this show, you will not like it. But as long as that balanced emotional bank account is sufficient, it will go down. If I do it one more time, third time you will say, who? I don't know him. Isn't it? So if they learn how to build that emotional bank account, that can be very healthy and useful in the time of conflict. And this is often done when you give and take, right? You give more and take less. Give more. Then you build the account. If you take more and not give, because there's no working relationship, the conflict time becomes very challenging. So on a normal day to day, it will be fine. But when there's a conflict and there's no emotional bank account because you don't know anybody, and you're just on the task focus, we call it task focus versus relationship focus. And the combination is the key. Relationship comes in more handy when there's a conflict. So this is the second point, right? Third, the Gen Z tend to believe more on the evidence. So what differentiate information from knowledge for me is the consistency of evidence. If this information is backed by a lot of scientific evidence, then it kind of goes more towards knowledge. And Gen Z tend to use that. So it's not that they just look at information. There is more evidence-based approach. So for us to convince them, we need more and more of evidence-based approach that reassures them that what information they are pursuing and the decision is backed by scientific evidence. Correct. And I would expose them to global cultures. So there is a simple thing that I still ask is that if I pull my child out of a global school, North American school, will the child survive anywhere in the world? And the other question I ask is, if I pull them out of an Indian school, will they survive? I feel that they will survive anywhere in the world when we pull them out. And perhaps because of the negative exposure often they get and the challenges they face, right? Now, when you get to be exposed to different styles, and India has enough. You go, you travel 500 kilometers in India and you will see different language, different culture. I would challenge them to travel, meet people. And there is enough in India. Or if it's global, then I would challenge them to look at and kind of embrace themselves in different cultures. It's the best learning experience. Going to buy milk. And I remember when I go to buy milk to make tea in Japan, we ended up with buttermilk and we didn't know. And that made us to learn how to read, how to interact, how to connect with people. Silly example. However, being able to get exposed in different cultures have a huge huge possibility. Okay.
No, excellent point. Yeah.
And then finally, the social media detox daily as a compounding. Okay, because social media is good as long as we use them, mobile, social media. When they start to use us as their numbers, we have given up our not just privacy, our ability, our time. And the time that we compound on building relationship will pay out long term. The time we lose on trivial technology, when technology is using us, it's a drain that is going to pull us. And this is what will differentiate, according to me, for Gen Z, those who continue to use the technology for their advantage will win in the long term versus those who are allowing themselves to be used by the technology and social media will differentiate who moves forward more fulfilled. I'm not talking about the results, just the inner fulfillment that I have drained my time will show up in 20 years. And there is enough data in our own research, if you look at some of my videos, where incremental usage of mobile has a consistent decline in well-being, increase in anxiety, increase in depression, and of course, poor sleep. And sleep is a core element. It's going to become a big deal in next 20 years.
No, excellent, Gunjan. A great three trips. I mean, one, of course, you mentioned about the emotional bank credit. I think it's a very beautiful way of explaining that it's more about giving, and as you give more in the time of conflict or in the time of a difficult phase of life or in the time of a need, it's the credit that you build that helps. And I also like the example of exposing our children or the young Gen Zs to newer environments, whether within India. I mean, India itself is extremely diverse, but even outside, right? It forces you to appreciate dealing with people, meeting people, understanding them, and only then you get things done. And finally, of course, the detox of the social media, which I think it's an absolute kind of a no-brainer, and where you why you said that use it for your benefit rather than let the social media not use you. Correct.